They may not always get their due in comparison to their single-star counterparts, but there have been plenty of dynamic duos throughout the course of WWE history who have had legendary Hall of Fame-worthy careers. And then there are these guys. Whether it was due to an awful gimmick, a complete absence of chemistry, or something else, these pathetic pairs proved that 2 isn't always better than 1. And just to be clear before we start, we are strictly looking at proper established tag teams here, so no one-off partnerships or enhancement talent duos or anything like that. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst tag teams in WWE history. Join us! Number 10, Men on a Mission. It's no secret that Vince McMahon thought bigger was better, so when he saw Mabel and Mo wrestling as the Harlem Knights in the Memphis-based USWA in the early 90s, he must have thought he was watching the best thing ever. He thought wrong. Renamed Men on a Mission and given Oscar as a mouthpiece, this rapping, dancing super heavyweight tandem stunk up the joint for over 2 years with clumsy, barely mobile matches that bored fans to tears. Amazingly, this cringe-worthy act were actually booked to win the tag team titles when they unexpectedly beat the Quebecers at a March 29, 1994 house show in London, England. Mabel and Mo was so useless that rumours persisted for years that the title change was accidental due to a botched finish, but nope, it was planned in advance. They only held the belts for 48 hours before dropping them back to Pierre and Jacques on another house show, but the record books show that Men on a Mission, who were slightly better as menacing heels as opposed to fun-loving babyfaces, were one-time WWE Tag Team Champions. Their recklessness made them enemies of the locker room, while few fans fondly remember their rotten hip-hopping novelty act. Number 9, the New Midnight Express. Bart Gunn and Bob Holly enjoyed success in tag teams, with Bart teaming up and winning gold with Billy Gunn as the Smoking Guns, and Bob teaming up and winning gold with the 1-2-3 Kid, Crash Holly, and Cody Rhodes. Bodacious Bart and Bombastic Bob also held gold with one another when they teamed up as the New Midnight Express in 1998. But holding the NWA World Tag Team titles was no reflection on their quality as a team, or interest in them, or the go-nowhere NWA invasion angle that led to them teaming up in the first place. If Holly and Gunn had formed a team organically and had a different gimmick, things might have gone better, since both were decent enough workers and knew their way around a tag match. The problem was, they were following in the footsteps of one of the best tag teams ever and hadn't done anything to earn the right to use that name. It was obvious that they were thrown together because creative had nothing better to do with them, and their lack of chemistry was evident on television, particularly when they went up against the original Midnight Express's greatest rivals, the Rock and Roll Express, at Unforgiven. Number 8, Well Done. Steve Dole and Rex King teamed up on the indies in the early 90s as the Southern Rockers before WWE signed them in 1993 and gave them the new monikers of Timothy Well and Stephen Dunn. Well done! And well done to you too, WWE Brain Trust. As well as the craptastic pun name, Well Done had some of the worst ring outfits any WWE star has had the displeasure to wear, as they matched bow ties with singlets that had thongs over the top of them. After initially failing to find much success, Well Done enlisted the services of Harvey Whippleman as their manager, who steered them even further away from success. Look, their narcissistic heel act was basic but fine, and it wasn't like they were outright terrible workers or anything, but Well Done were very much a bottom of the card act that just filled a spot and didn't do much of note despite being on the WWE roster for 2 years. I mean, when your biggest rivalry is a highlight with the Bushwhackers, you know you're in trouble. Number 7, the Heart Throbs. So we go from Well Done to this pair of absolute throbbers. After impressing in WWE Feeder Farm Ohio Valley Wrestling as the Heartbreakers, Antonio Thomas and Romeo Roselli were called up to the main roster in April of 2005. With a new name so as not to confuse with a certain Heartbreak Kid. They were even granted a Madison Square Garden debut in a World Tag Team title match, but the fact that they lost that bout to William Regal and Tajiri in less than 5 minutes should have told them everything about their chances on Raw. The Heart Throbs were essentially an obnoxious entrance and little else, and were primarily used to put over other better teams. Yes, I do count Val Venus and Viscera as a better team, thank you very much. They were also so low on the pecking order that they were jobbed out in various 2-on-1 handicap matches, including a 28-second loss to Kane that served as one of their last appearances before being given their future endeavours. Antonio and Romeo, we hardly knew ye. A corny gimmick and unexceptional between the ropes, nobody was heartbroken when the Heart Throbs hung up their feather boas. Number 6, the Harris Brothers. I'm just going to lump in all of Ron and Don Harris's guises into one ugly little package here, because regardless of what they were called or what their gimmick was, one fact remained. They absolutely sucked. Eli and Jacob Blue? They sucked. The Grimm Twins? Oh yeah, they sucked too. 8-Ball and Skull of the Disciples of Apocalypse? You better believe they sucked. Ron and Don got opportunity after opportunity during their careers because they were big and had an intimidating look and presence, but that's about all they had going for them. They never had a really decent match in a WWE ring thanks to their rudimentary moveset and lack of charisma, yet they were a regular presence on TV and pay-per-view for years. If you like generic-looking dudes lumbering around the ring and punching and kicking and clubbing and punching and kicking and clubbing some more, then the Harris Brothers might be the team for you. Not for me, though. Number 5, Road Warrior Animal and John Heidenreich. After attempting to kill The Undertaker and, romance Michael Cole, the unhinged Heidenreich became a goose-stepping, child-hugging babyface. Seems like a natural enough progression to me. And when Heidenreich was targeted and beaten down by WWE Tag Team Champions M&M, none other than Road Warrior Animal came to his rescue. How strange that Animal would come back, team with some random weirdo, and win the tag straps right around a time when a DVD on the life and times of the original Road Warriors was being released, eh? Obviously this was all done to promote the DVD, but slapping some shoulder pads and face paint on Heidenreich was hardly a fitting tribute to one of the most awesome forces in pro wrestling history. Animal was also far from the performer he had been in his prime, and not even adding the lovely Christy Hemme to the act could distract from the fact that this rebooted Legion of Doom were the absolute pits. After dropping the titles back to Mercury and Nitro, the team of Animal and Heidenreich fizzled out and were relegated from SmackDown to Velocity and house shows before their union came to an end when Heidenreich was released. Number 4, Fake Diesel and Fake Razor Ramon. When Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left the Fed for WCW in the spring of 1996, Vince McMahon wasn't mad. He wasn't mad at all. So you better not say he was mad, alright? I mean, why would you be mad? It wasn't Hall and Nash the fans loved anyway. It was Razor Ramon and Diesel. And Vince McMahon's Titan Sports Inc. owned the copyright on those Big Daddy bad boys. Big Daddy bad guys. So he gave the gimmicks to Rick Bogner and Glenn Jacobs, who, to their credit, did their best to get into the roles. But neither man was ready, and the gimmick was an insult to them, not to mention the fans who rightly responded to it with apathy. Fake Razor and Fake Diesel didn't possess 1/10 of the timing, presence, or charisma that the originals had, and the whole damn idea was cursed from the get-go. That didn't stop WWE giving them something of a push mind, which included a tag title match at the In Your House It's Time pay-per-view. The experiment came to a merciful end after they were eliminated from the 1997 Royal Rumble, giving WWE the opportunity to focus on quality tag teams like the Godwins and the New Blackjacks. Number 3, the Dicks. So, you decide to get into the wrestling business. You put in the hours in the gym and gain enough experience to the point that WWE sees your potential and offers you a developmental deal. Then, against all the odds, you are one of the few that actually gets called up to the main roster. And then what happens? They make you a dick. After wrestling as the Blonde Bombers in OVW, Tank Toland and Chad Wicks were brought to SmackDown as James and Chad Dick. The Dicks. Greased up to high heaven and rocking suspenders and breakaway pants, the Dicks were essentially the Blue Brand's equivalent of the Heart Throbs who, as we've already discussed, were pretty bad themselves. If we're being honest, Chad and James were basically just there for the commentators to crack knob jokes, and they didn't do much in the ring. They didn't have a hope of climbing up the card anyway, since they were about as tall as they were wide, and we all know how hard it was to overcome a lack of height in Vince McMahon's WWE. The Dicks didn't quite measure up, you might say. They might have been rock hard and cocky, but that didn't help their flaccid run from coming to a limp end. Spunk. Number 2, the Gemini. Honestly, I am convinced at this point that WWE were actively attempting to kill tag team wrestling by flooding their doubles division with awful teams in the mid-2000s. The Heart Throbs might have been lame, the new Legion of Doom a pale imitation of the original thing, and the Dicks, well, they were just a couple of dicks, weren't they? Those teams were woeful, yes, but at least they had something interesting about them. The same cannot be said of the Gemini. The Shane twins had been floating around here and there for years, notably having a banner run in TNA as the Johnsons before being signed to WWE. The creative team's big idea was having them act as the protein-powered henchmen of fitness freak Simon Dean. Jake and Jesse went on a tear. Well, a tear might be a little generous, but they won some very dull matches before Todd Shane suffered an injury and the team were taken off TV, never to return. Honestly though, that was no big loss, as these beefed-up Basham brothers had nothing going for them besides the fact that they looked exactly the same. Number 1. Techno Teen 2000. After failing to reap the benefits of nepotism in WCW, Eric Watts joined WWE during his father's short-lived stay as a booker there in 1995. Not so thankfully, he would be pushed as one half of a hot up-and-coming tag out of their depth. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Troy and Travis, Techno Team 2000. Well, if you like the letter T so much, WWE, let me offer a few T's to describe this new generation misfire. Terrible, tripe, toxic, tedious, tired, tepid, tragic, and how about totally and utterly bollocks? I know it's not a T, shut up. Their look was a shambles, their ring work was the pits, it wasn't like inexperienced former American football player Chad Fortune was going to carry things, and their gimmick was confusing. Were they supposed to be from the future or representing what wrestling in the future would be? Whatever the case, allow me to fire up the DeLorean and do what's best for the good of sports entertainment. On the plus side, the Techno Twats only lasted a handful of televised outings before joining the Red Rooster, Battlecat, and Bastion Booger in the depths of gimmick hell.